All right, welcome everybody to episode 27 of the Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. I am Anthony Ewing with Thoughtiem. We are here every Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock Central, and we want to welcome everybody as you are joining our Zoom room. We want to welcome those folks who are joining the discussion today. I'll also note that if you are in the Zoom room, please feel free to say hello in the chat box. Also in Q&A. And if you have any questions, also drop those in the chat box. We love questions throughout. Our guest today is willing and open for any questions throughout the discussion. So please say hello and share some thoughts. We also want to welcome everybody joining via YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, particularly our LinkedIn community. We know we have a handful of folks that stop by, whether that's in the LinkedIn feed, good to see you, or those folks who are joining us via YouTube. You can find all of our episodes, both past and future, at thoughtiem.com/live. So we are 27 weeks into our virtual roundtable series, and the guests just keep getting better and better and better. The discussion continues to get deeper and deeper, all of which focused on leadership topics that matter most to us as we navigate today. And today we are extremely excited to have our guest, Rupert Pearce. He is the founder of Growing Happy. Rupert is also an organizer of communities and people. He's got an incredible story to tell, and I'm just so thrilled to have him here on the virtual roundtable series. So Rupert, thank you so much for joining and welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here, and hopefully we can live up to those big expectations that you've just presented. So let's see.
Yes, and so tell us, first and foremost, you are calling from, or you are joining us from the UK, correct? So it's what, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night?
It is. So I've just, as I said, I've just moved into my first ever house today. So it's been quite a day, and I've just checked out the shower, and I think there's a hole in the shower. So there may well be water coming through the ceiling, but we'll see how we go, because it's a good adventure.
Well, it's funny, you know, Rupert, if water is coming through your ceiling in your brand new house, I hope that's not the case. But if that's what's on your mind, I will tell you, it was a full day here at Thoughtiem, and we were spread in about 16 different directions. And you and I just, connected about 10 minutes ago in prep for this, and we both just kind of had a collective deep breath in and deep breath out. And I think that's so important on days like today. So congratulations on your move. Also, thank you for joining us at 9 o'clock at night here on the virtual roundtable. We brought you into this discussion, because again, we think you just have an incredible story to tell. And we know that at the forefront of what you do is really connecting people through community. The topic for today and the title of the episode is Reconnecting Our Communities. Tell us a little bit about reconnecting our communities and why reconnecting is so important today.
I think, and it's certainly been made worse during the pandemic, loneliness and isolation is a bigger problem in our societies than it has ever been. It's on the rise. I think the cost of loneliness and disconnected communities in the UK is roughly about £32 billion a year. And I think people are more polarized than ever, unfortunately. I think that can be seen in recent events in the US. And I think if you look at, for the first time, kind of well-being measures are starting to go down rather than up. And I know Steven Pinker's done huge amounts of amazing work in the US looking at how things are getting better in terms of prosperity, in terms of life expectancy. But actually, there's a problem with how we're connecting with each other and how we're building relationships with each other. I think one book which is quite seminal in my thinking, it comes from kind of Johann Hari and Lost Connections. I'm not sure if it's a book you've read, but
nope.
I think it focuses on this issue that through social media, I watched A Social Dilemma last night, which, great documentary. But people feel more isolated. People feel less able to connect with people just down their street. And I think there's a great opportunity, and there's lots of amazing work going on right across the world to rebuild those communities, to reconnect those communities. And that's what's really exciting. Because while there is a challenge right now, people are more polarized. We have to find a way to bring people together. We have to find a way for businesses to connect to communities. We have to find a way for different towns and cities to bring in local villages. And in the UK, there's been huge investment in cities, in London, where I am now. Whereas if you go to other parts of the UK, particularly up north, but also where I'm from, down in Somerset in the southwest of England, there's challenges around investment in those smaller towns, smaller cities and smaller villages. So I think if we can work on some solutions for that and actually bring people together, then we might be able to make some real change.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so much there, right? I mean, what an undertaking. And I want to talk a little bit about, Growing Happy and the seemingly small yet also big impact, or let's say cut that you're taking at reconnecting communities. But as you're talking about this concept of now more than ever, the opportunity that we have to reconnect our communities, I take a look at what's happening here in the US. And I would say even just over the last, 3-4 weeks, we've had a real clear reminder that we have an opportunity to reconnect, as individuals, as communities, as groups, as organizations. And do you get the sense that and I guess my question is, here in the US, we do get the sense that there is a bit of a need and an urgency to let go a little bit of the grip hold that we have on our collective identity or our group identity and reach across. We've been saying a lot over the last few weeks, take a deep breath, much like you and I did prior to this session, and allow ourselves to coexist. Do you get the same sense that that's happening globally, or is it maybe just, more emphasized here in the US with, everything that's been going on politically and socially here over the last year?
I think there are challenges. There are obviously challenges across Europe. There's been challenges here in the UK with Brexit, which we won't dwell on for too long. But I think speaking to people in the US this week as well, there's a lot of fear. That we actually can't find a way to bring these two groups back together and these two sides back together. And there's a lot of noise. Obviously, there's a lot of noise on the extremes. But what are people wanting to say and how are people wanting to connect in the middle should maybe be our focus. Someone said something, I think, really insightful to me a few weeks ago. One of the organizations we're working with, we're so hung up on right and wrong. And we've got to let that go a little bit. Maybe it's helpful, unhelpful, or valuable, less valuable, or maybe it's skillful, unskillful in terms of how we look at ourselves and look at our behavior. But just saying right and wrong all the time, for me, it immediately stops conversation. And when you're talking about reconnecting communities, you're talking about openness. You're talking about trust, transparency. And I think politicians have lost some of that. I was talking yesterday about genuine leaders. And we need genuine leadership right now. We need people who will stand above the party political, be that Democrats or Republicans. And we need people to take a bigger look at what's important for the country and also what's important for the world, because we're running out of time with lots of issues, particularly around the environment. But there's huge social problems as well. So we need to take a step back. We need to take a breath. we need to try and reconnect the physical, mental, and spiritual. And if we can do all of those things, again, we might be starting to move the needle. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the ways we can do that. But I think there is a challenge. People are polarized, and I think it's not just a problem in the US. Unfortunately, I think it's a global issue.
Yeah, that's so great. And I want to dive a little bit into, how can we take all of this in, and how can we enable ourselves to lead amongst a lot of this, where our orientation might be to choose right or wrong, or to make distinct decisions, right? Like how do we allow some of this uncertainty in, whether that's, into our organization, into our lives, or into our communities. Before we do that, I want to take a step even further back, and I want to learn a little bit more about you. You were brought to us by one of our teammates, and she said, "You've got to meet Ru." She called you Ru. She said, "You've got to meet Ru. He's just this incredible energy, and he's got a great story." So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story, your background. And the question that we love to ask leaders who come into to the discussion is, what is your practitionership? And we define practitionership by very simply the work that you love to do every day, but maybe a little bit more romantically, the work that if you could live the rest of your life doing it, you would do it. The work that you consider your art form or your craft. What is your practitionership, Rupert?
Great question. And I feel almost guilty sometimes talking about this, because I love growing happy and what we're trying to do so much. So I feel incredibly fortunate. Not to say it's always easy, and it's certainly not. But kind of if that fire, if that burn, if that passion, when you wake up in the morning, is there in something you do, then we all know that's so valuable in your life. We were talking yesterday again about superpowers, and what's your superpower in terms of what you're good at, where you really excel. And I'd like to think that would be inspiring people, and maybe something Erin saw in terms of bringing an energy and an ambition and a drive that allows other people to be better. So I think focusing on that and allowing and inspiring other people to do the brilliant work and to create the change. Hopefully I can just be a little fire underneath people that really allows them to excel, allows them to be as successful as they want to be. And hopefully pretty good at bringing lots of different people together, people from very different backgrounds. I love introducing new people to each other who've got complementary skills that again, if you get these different types of people working together, then that's magic. That for me, that's the gold dust. That hopefully, again, Growing Happy will continue to do and do more and more in the future.
I'm so interested in, because what I'm hearing you say is you love to put other people on. And that is a passion of mine as well, too, to lift others up, to tell other people's stories, to ignite other people's greatness, if you will. I like to make other people look good. That's just something that I especially people that I believe in, and a mentor of mine always said that, everybody wants to be a number one, but one of the best jobs in the world is to be number two, right? Like running alongside the number one and enabling them. And whether that number one is another leader or a group of people. Where do you think you get that from? Like if you had to trace that back, right, to your childhood or your upbringing, where do you get that desire to lift others up and tell other people's stories?
Again, great question. I think it probably comes from, and people who know me and know my family will know my dad is an incredible question asker and a relentless question asker. And he is so interested, so deeply interested on what makes the world tick, what makes people tick. I think growing up around him and his, I was with him a few weeks ago, and he said, "Oh, I've been a bit naughty today." And I said, "What do you mean you've been a bit naughty?" And he said, I've started another 6 books today." So he'd gone from 8 to 14 books that he was reading in one go.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Along with a loving family that really cared about each other and gave back. My brother and mum gave me huge love and support as a child, and I think that's hopefully built a base that can sometimes and hopefully allow other people to tell their story and give people the space. Because even I'd love to hear more about your background and your story, and I think I'm used to asking the questions, not answering them. But I think it comes from family.
It's so interesting. It never fails. We're 27 episodes in, and every single one of these episodes somehow, some way goes back to family. And it's typically when we ask these questions about the work that you love to do, and then you start to ask why, and there's a rule out there that says if you ask somebody why at least 3 or 4 times on the same question, inevitably they'll end in tears. Because you go to family, and then you go to these experiences that you had growing up, and those experiences have such emotion. And I think we process those experiences as adults much differently than we do as children. And I know right now, I'm in a season of my life where I'm processing my upbringing and my childhood in a way that I can more vastly appreciate it, and I think that's because of the path that I've chosen in life, and I'm able to now more directly see the path that I've chosen in life, and I'm able to see my practitionership through my childhood. And I always revert back to the stories of sitting at my grandfather's kitchen table and having him ask these unbelievable questions about our dreams and our hopes and our desires, and I was a subject of those questions. And now I want to spend every second of every day being on the delivering end of those questions, because I know the power in those questions of asking somebody, what do you love to do? And then holding that space for them, right? And I know that that's a lot of what you do for your clients. So I want to, let's get into Growing Happy. Let's talk about Growing Happy. First of all, you can't say the name of that company without a smile on your face. And I want to, so tell us a little bit about Growing Happy, and also maybe tell us about kind of the origin story. Because it's just, again, it's such an intriguing name and a concept, and I'd love to hear more.
So I guess I'll take you a little bit back. So finished university here in the UK. I was doing philosophy and politics, and was quite interested in the political system and how things were working, and ended up working for a political party briefly, but in the run up to the 2010 election. And it was eye-opening. It was incredibly eye-opening, and made me decide to not get into politics, partly because it was so divisive, and it was so difficult to say you've made a mistake and say you've got it wrong. Because you do have to be right all the time, or at least seem to be right all the time. And then I worked for a small tech consultancy and training organization, which in the time that I was with them became quite a big tech consultancy and training organization, and went from about 30 employees to probably over 3,000, and became a FTSE 250 company, and I was very fortunate to come and work in the US, so get to know people like Erin, and work quite a lot in Chicago actually, and I love the city, love the US, So I was working and living in New York and loved it, but knew that wasn't always going to be what I wanted to do. It wasn't. While I did, I felt like I was serving my clients and serving the individuals within the organization. I didn't feel like I was necessarily living my love or living my dream. So I was sitting in the boardroom one day overlooking Wall Street, and it wasn't any kind of. It was just you got to go home. You got to start something else, and you got to start something different. So wow. I went home and said to my girlfriend at the time, we've got to move back. Got to move back to London. Like I can't create a startup living in New York. That's for sure. So we moved
why
back.
not? Why not? I mean, just why not New York?
Financially, mainly. Financially, New York would be a great place for startups, obviously. But it wasn't sustainable, and I wasn't actually allowed to work there without being part of that organization. But who knows in the future? Because I think
sure.
I think it's an exciting country, and I think we'd love to do more work. And we're doing some work in the US, but love to do more work there as well.
One move at a time, Rupert.
Exactly. So it was a great start, and then 3 years later, it has had its adventures, and we've now got 3 core divisions. So how we think about changing the world or creating change or igniting change, reconnecting communities, is there's 3 core elements for me, and the 3 divisions bring that together. So we've got the research and impact division, headed up by Dr. Ben Rocket, who's an amazing individual and someone I went to primary school with, actually. And he's actually looking at, do organizations or individuals or projects or programs actually deliver the change they want to? Are they set up in a way that their outcomes are actually delivering their mission or their vision? And so that allows us to say, is this program, is this project really going to deliver what you want it to? It's great doing that, but then how do you tell people about it? So we've then got the film and communications division, and through the Special Olympics, which we might talk about later, I've met some amazing directors, producers, filmmakers who are truly at the top of their industry, at the top of their game. So they can now tell people stories in a way, tell the success stories and the impact of those organizations or individuals in a completely new and different way. And then we've got the kind of consultants or program managers or project managers who can come in and look at the delivery. Is this project or program actually delivering what you want it to? And by bringing together lots of different people with huge amounts of skill, I think we can allow individuals within communities to start creating the change they want to, empowering them to have their voice and create the change that they're creating it. We're just facilitating. We're just supporting it. And that's what we all love to do, everyone in the team.
So tell us what type of clients do you work with?
We'll work with bigger organizations. We've done some work with governments. We've also worked with businesses and much smaller charities and individuals. Because for us, it's about what's the mission, what's the change? How can we accelerate that change? How can we ignite that change? So we really will work on any project that we feel fits with the overall mission of what we're trying to do and is really trying to ignite change and positive social change across society.
So the process then is really focused at driving positive change. And let's say you're working with a large organization. Do you find that, maybe tell us a little bit about your process that makes this unique versus maybe the standard, process of a bit of benchmarking, some strategy, and pull through, right? I know that the work that you do to drive change is so much more than kind of the traditional process that maybe we're used to following, in larger organizations. Tell us a little bit about what makes Growing Happy unique.
Perhaps, and I'm keen to get on to some of the new work that we've been doing around attachment theory with organizations.
Perfect.
But first, it might be good to just set it up with telling you a little bit about what we did with the Special Olympics. So Special Olympics World Games 2019, we were brought in by the creative agency People, the stories that change lives and events that change lives. They're an amazing organization. But their pitch or their vision for the Special Olympics World Games was that it's not for us to tell the story. It's for individuals to tell their story to the world. And it's the first Olympic ceremony that has been created by individuals with intellectual disabilities. And that has shaped our way of working so much. Because we have had to, again, go in and facilitate those conversations and allow those individuals, and we spent kind of 10 months in the lead up to the Special Olympics, really working with these individuals to share their voice, to work with their voice, and then bring in experts to work alongside them. So you're constantly building. If you think about it again as a project or a process, you start with that openness, that building confidence, building security. If you wanted to look at it in attachment terms, right. You build that secure base. You build that safe haven for people to feel like they can share their voice, they can share their story. And then once you've built that trust and that support, you can then start to bring other people in to work with the ideas and support those ideas and take them to another level. And then you feed those ideas back into the group. We work with about 50 individuals with intellectual disabilities across the UAE. And then they take it to a whole new level again, and they come up with completely new ideas. And they see, when people see their ideas played back to them, they see their vision played back to them. I'm sure you've seen it all the time. Yeah. It allows people to see it in a different way and then take it to the next level. So we ended up creating a ceremony that was broadcast on ESPN to kind of over 3.5 million people, over 55,000 people in the stadium. I can remember, and one organization I must mention, because we worked with a number of individuals from Mawaheb Art Studio in Dubai. And for me, it was an incredible place. And due to COVID, they've just had to shut down. It has just become too tough for them. But I'm still regularly in touch with a number of the individuals from that art studio, and they were creating incredible artists that were selling their own work and creating businesses around that. But I can remember one day we were doing some filming, and we had a film crew with us, and we wanted to tell these stories. And we were up, it was a sweaty room, it was probably 45 degrees in Dubai. And we were interviewing a gentleman called James. And James was telling us about being bullied as a child, to the point where he couldn't go to school. He didn't want to go to school. And he said the only thing that could get him through was writing songs and then performing those songs. And I was interviewing him. I said, James, come on then, give us a tune. Let's hear it. So he stands up and he starts, this beautiful voice starts belting across the room. It is unbelievable. I look around at the film crew, the director, the filmmaker, kind of jaws had dropped, and the power of James's voice was unbelievable. But the important thing is not just to build that relationship; it's to allow it to grow. James ended up performing in front of 45,000 people with Kiala Settle in the closing ceremony. His songs became the songs of the opening ceremony. We worked with a woman called Asma. Her poetry became the poetry in that opening ceremony. That hasn't been done before. And if we can give everyone the opportunity to share their story, to share their voice, it was an unbelievable experience, and gives me goosebumps thinking about it. But I think that's fed so much into the kind of process that we now have and the way we work with individuals and with organizations.
Yeah, I mean, I get goosebumps just thinking about it as well too. To think that your ability to create security and safety, we call that secure attachment, right? With individuals, allowing them to open up and share their talents is incredible. I'm curious, how do you get people to open up in that way? I know that it wasn't just a single prompt of like, come on, James, share a tune. How do we create safe environments for people, to step in and share their greatness?
I think there's some danger of overthinking it, but it's so important that we can create that base of openness, of trust. How do we know? How do we create a relationship where someone knows that if they come back, you're going to support them? Someone said to me, it's unconditional love. You've got complete, and when you talk about the Dalai Lama, you think of unconditional love. So how can you hold that space? How can you give people that time to really connect? And it doesn't happen overnight. But with James, I've been working with him for 3 or 4 months, to the point where when I said, go on, James, give us a tune, it was immediate. And I think that's what we've lost, because we've got to do things so quickly now. We're always wanting to race to the next thing, the next great idea, the great next innovation. But actually we need to take a bit more time and build those solid relationships, build those foundations.
And these days, more than ever, isn't it about just showing up? When more and more uncertainty starts to surround us, sometimes just showing up is the strongest expression of I'm here, and this we have this space together. And I attune that to particularly the way our team here at Thought Team has shown up for each other over the course of the last 6 to 8 months through incredible amounts of change, and both personal and professional uncertainty, the ability to just show up and have that space. And, I know this is such a cliche and overused term, but it's true. To hold that space for somebody else or for a team is sometimes, like you said, don't overthink it. That's simply what you need to do. There was a split second before you and I started this that I think we both sensed that we were both coming in from a very hectic day today. And there was a moment where I think you and I both collectively trusted each other to pause in the moment and not have the next thing to say. And I think that dynamic is very interesting, not just in an interview type of a setting, but in a leadership setting as well, too.
And that's where trust can grow, and people can believe in you. So you again, if you start to look at it, an organization we're starting to work with who've got incredibly strong relationships. So if you look at attachment theory, you look at the relationships between people, and the bonds between people. And this organization have already got incredible relationships. They've got that secure base. They've got that safe haven. But what we are talking about is going from this dependency relationship. So you've got a dependency to your manager or your leader or your colleague within the organization. And then how do you go from that dependency? Because you know, whatever you do, you make a mistake, you fail, someone's going to be there. Someone's going to be there to support you. And I'm sure, again, with your organization, with COVID, things aren't easy. People are having difficult times at home. People are having difficult times at the office. But they know they can go to you. You know, they know if they need to pick up the phone, you're going to be there.
Yeah.
So it then starts to get really interesting when people know they've got that secure attachment. Then they can start to grow. Then they can start to take that next step. They can start to develop. They become independent. So they can go out into the outside world and they can try things and they can come up with their ideas. They can share their latest thoughts. They can share their latest innovations. And if things go badly in the outside world or in a meeting, they'll come back. And they know that that person, that manager, that leader is still going to be there to support them. Where it becomes even more exciting and more interesting, and this is the review we're doing with this organization, is when people start to become codependent or interdependent. And that's where the individuals have created that secure attachment. They've become independent, but then they might have taken on so many different projects with their independence that they then actually realize that they need their colleagues. They need other people around them. And that's where you can become interdependent. And that's where the real magic again can start to happen, because then you rely on other people. It's not about you or I running around and doing everything. It's about trusting and having that trusting relationship with your colleagues and having that lens to look at all your relationships. You might have anxious colleagues or anxious, ambivalent colleagues, but it's about being able to recognize that you've got those people who look out for you.
It's so primitive, isn't it? You know, when you're talking about this ability to develop secure environments, secure attachment, you know, to have a healthy relationship with your organization and with your leaders. And you talk about, you know, an indicator of that is that, you know, I, as a colleague, can step away and have some independence. And I know that if and when I come back, there is stability and consistency there. It's funny because as you're talking about that, I'm thinking of like a flock of ducks. I'm thinking about animals, you know, I'm thinking about, you know, fleeing the coop, but like knowing that mom and dad are always going to be back. And again, it's just so primitive. And, you know, I think attachment theory is just such an interesting topic that it's making its way into personal development. I know that for a fact. You know, we're hearing a lot about attachment theory in relationships, and folks are starting to learn a little bit more about their attachment styles in interpersonal relationships. I think the relationship that we have with our organization is next level. And I wish we had more time to unpack that, but it's fascinating that you're able to even bring those concepts in as you work with organizations and with people. I want to maybe go to your second pillar, which is the storytelling piece, because this is the one that really fascinates me. I know that, you know, by trade, you're a photographer and a storyteller, and or I should say videographer, photographer. You're a content creator. Talk to us a little bit about how content creation, or let me step up one level. How has storytelling changed? How is storytelling different today than maybe it was 10 or 15 years ago?
It's so noisy. The industry is so noisy right now, and there's obviously so many platforms. And I'm certainly not the expert here. So the filmmakers I work with are certainly the experts, and the directors will be laughing at me trying to answer this question. But I think that's where we want to be unique in our ability to, again, truly, and then people throw around the word empower, and sometimes it's cheesy and sometimes it's not, but I truly believe if we can empower the communities and the individuals whose stories we tell, then we're doing our job properly. And if we don't do that, then we're not. So if we're working with individuals with disabilities, how can we train those individuals to become filmmakers if they want to become filmmakers, or video editors if they want to become video editors? And how do we create an environment where we leave something behind in the communities we work with? We allow them to become the experts. We allow them to grow. Kind of Adam Hinton, who's one of the directors and photographers we work with a lot. He goes in and he builds a true relationship with those subjects, and that then comes across in the film. And that's where we are going to work harder and harder over the next few years to empower the communities we work with. So to run workshops in those communities, to allow them to create their own content, because they can tell the story just as well as us. And that, there's amazing equipment and we can make things look beautiful, but sometimes just something filmed on your phone has just as powerful an emotional hit. If you can really get to someone's emotions because you're telling your true story, that's what matters. That's what that for me, and that's only my opinion, that for me is what filmmaking is about. It's about how do you allow people to truly tell their story, and how do you capture those moments that can create real change, that can allow society to recognize that this is an important issue. And we need to take notice. We need to recognize this, and we need to change. We need to do something differently because we recognize how important this is.
I love that. And on the other side of the argument that says that there is so much noise out there is, I think, this opportunity to enable folks to tell their story organically. I think about 10 or 15 years ago, and as a classically trained marketer, I think about the marketing cycle, and it involved, a ton of demographic research and focus groups and market research and storyboarding and early concepts and the whole production team coming in for several days of shooting and post-production. And that cycle was sometimes months, if not years. And we're starting to see that some of even the largest organizations are challenging themselves and almost being challenged to shorten that cycle very drastically. We're calling that real-time marketing. That's a concept that I've heard most recently, in that your ability to turn meaningful content over very quickly is a competitive advantage in a multi-channel world. And one of the best ways to scale content development and distribution is through your people. So enabling your people to tell the stories. And it sounds like that's at the heart of the storytelling component to what you all do.
Yeah. So it's so important. And if you get it right, it's beautiful. We're talking about, there's one project we're working on at the moment, and the individuals in that community feel completely disconnected from their city and from the leadership. But by actually not just running focus groups, to your point, but actually allowing individuals within those groups to then create their own content, to tell their stories, to say how they want to change that city or that community. What do they want to do differently? How do they want to do it differently? And I think this is where it's important as well. And this is where Growing Happy needs the different divisions, is not just allowing them to tell that story, but then figuring out a way for them to be able to do it. Because it's all very well empowering them by giving someone a camera and saying, great, tell your story. But if you say, tell your story, and tell us what you want to do differently, and then you don't give them an opportunity to do that, then for me, you miss something and you lose something. And we've got to get better at doing that across society, not just hearing people's voices, but empowering them to do something with it and supporting them. I
love that prompt. Tell us your story and tell us what you want to do differently. And I think what maybe you're alluding to, which is your third pillar, right? Which is the enablement piece of this, right? So you've got the research, you've got the ability to develop and craft stories through organizations and individuals. Tell us a little bit about the enablement piece. And I think, we've already gotten a really great example of James. You're doing this interview and you said, play us a tune. And next thing you know, he's playing in front of, or singing in front of tens of thousands of people. Tell us about the pull-through piece. Like, what are some of the things that you're doing to enable organizations and teams to really go out and enact change?
So one of the things that has been a real focus since the Special Olympics, actually. And one of the biggest projects that we work on and we support, which is called Be the Change. We got to the end of the opening ceremony and thought, that's great. Again, we've shown the world, we've given people a voice, we've done that bit.
The story's been told. Yep.
Story's been told. But the individuals I've been working with for the last 10 months, all they kept telling me, I said, what do you want to do in the future? What are your dreams? What are your ambitions? All they kept saying to me is, just want to work. Just want to work. Just want a job. You've got one. Why can't I have one? And in the UK, 7% of individuals with intellectual disabilities or learning disabilities have a job. That's dropped to 6% now. With the pandemic, it will go lower. And there's a lot of frustration. So since the Special Olympics, we've spent a long time. We've worked in the UAE initially, worked with the government there and with one of the biggest schools for working with individuals with disabilities. And they've created over 170 new jobs, 5 new startup organizations, social enterprises, and an environmental campaign where they take plastic bottles from across the city and turn those plastic bottles, recycle them, and turn them into school uniforms. So there's real change that we've managed to be part of there, and not just listening to the stories through the Special Olympics, but then actually getting on board and doing something about it, and allowing this to become a national campaign across the UAE and now an international campaign. So managed to persuade CNN to get involved, and Becky Anderson has been amazing from CNN. And then we persuaded Bear Grylls to support us, and BMF in the UK. So we had our UK launch last year. And now the thing for me and what we've been working on through the pandemic and through COVID is, how do we get this running in the UK? How do we create more job opportunities? How do we create more social enterprises? And I feel very lucky to be able to work with a number of individuals in Liverpool, supported interns who are working with Growing Happy right now, who are creating their own businesses. And this is where it really matters, because we started working with one individual who was doing some editing work for us, an individual with a learning disability who's very angry, very frustrated about the fact that employment is so low. And he's got huge ability. And it goes back to the superpower thing again. It's about ability. Let's focus on what people are really good at. There's lots we're not very good at, but there's lots of things individuals are really good at. And so now we're working with this individual, and he's got ideas that are going to create fundamental change across the system in the UK. We've already been speaking to some US organizations about his social enterprise as well. But he's got some incredible ideas. With the right support and the right facilitation, we can create a mechanism, a process, and working with other organizations, hopefully like Project Search, which was founded in the US, and a wonderful woman called Erin. We can bring this together, and we can create a fundamental change to how employment opportunities are provided and facilitated for individuals with disabilities. So that's one of the projects that we're working on at the moment. But you can obviously tell that I'm just a little bit passionate about it, and are passionate about the individuals we're working with in Liverpool, because we get this right, and they will fundamentally change how things work, not just in the UK, but internationally.
Right. Yeah. It's one thing to acknowledge and hold the space and tell a story, but it's another to truly enable people. And, Rupert, I want to here publicly acknowledge that anytime that you've brought up the Special Olympics story, the smile on your face, and I mean, you can just see it, and you can absolutely feel the passion that you bring to that work, that this is not just a project or an engagement, but that this is something that you really, really believe in. And I think that is a key ingredient to creating the space for these communities to step into the platform that you're building. And, I want to commend you for that and thank you for that, because it's incredibly inspiring. When you're able to talk to somebody whose face lights up about the work that they do, it's incredibly rare. And I really think you've found your life's work. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Really appreciate it.
So we have a couple minutes left, and I've got a question here in queue that I think is just a great one. It takes us back a little bit to the kind of leadership principles that there's a lot that have shown up even in this discussion today. And as I look at your process, there's a lot of things as leaders, we have leaders that tune into this content can take away. There's some things I've taken away today. Again, the importance of creating and holding the space, the ability for your peers and your teammates to have a healthy relationship with you as a leader, and with your organization as an entity, and as well the power in helping folks tell their story, and then challenging them and prompting them to then take that story and go and enact change. And so again, I've just learned so much, and I hope I maybe summed up a few of the kind of key leadership principles that I know people are really getting from this. What are some of the things you think about as it pertains to your own leadership? What do you lead with as you work with your team and as you work with organizations and communities?
I think the big thing is emotion. And actually, I was someone who found it very difficult, and still do find it difficult sometimes, and it might not seem like it this evening, but to be truly open with your feelings. And I lived in a very kind of rational, logical way. You've got to do X to get to Y. These are the outcomes. This is the delivery. This is the roadmap. This is the project plan. But actually, you've got to take a step back and you've got to get out of your mind. We're all so stuck in our heads. I believe we're all too stuck in our heads, and we've got to actually start feeling again. And that goes back to reconnection. It goes back to that self-awareness point. So if you can start to reconnect your emotions, you can start to become more self-aware. And even if the ego is getting out of control at certain times, and even if you've got negative behaviors at certain times, if you can take a step back and you can reflect it, and you can also feel it, and you can feel those times when things aren't working right. I think for me, being able to be open with your feelings, being open with your challenges, your weaknesses, because again, when we talk about superpowers, it's great to have superpowers, but there's lots of things we can't do. There's lots of things we're not very good at, and being open enough to say, just not very good at that. It'd be far better if you were doing that for me, or you were working on that. That for me is a big piece of the puzzle. That before I came to the US, spirituality and emotion, certainly in Britain, we're very skeptical. You can't talk about spirituality. You can't talk about emotion. It's all very logical. Don't be so stupid, Rupert. Why would you bring that up? But being in the US allowed me actually to be more open, and to investigate lots of things around meditation, mindfulness, taking that second, being self-aware. And I think all of those things as a leader, if you can be open, flexible, adaptable, it's easy to say these words. But it's much more difficult to truly live them, particularly when it's stressful. When things are difficult, if you've got relationships at work, if you're creating that secure attachment, you can't just coach it. You can't just say there's going to be a secure attachment there. You have to live it, because if you take that away, and you don't actually live it, then you've built an insecure relationship with those people.
again, just a ton that I would love to dive into, but I think, you know, what I'm hearing you say, and I've been thinking about this a lot recently too, as a leader and just as a human, you know, you spend your entire life dealing with and managing emotion. And then at some point in your life, you realize that the game is being with it. And then you realize that you can, by being with it and inviting others in, you're able to enable people around you. But it's just that it fascinates me. At what point in your life do you realize that it's not about managing emotions? It's about being with them and creating space for others to share in that with you.
That's beautiful.
It's a whole nother episode.
It's beautiful the way you said that. You're absolutely right. Yeah. You're absolutely right. It's going to a deeper level where you can sit with things, and you can sit with disappointment, and you can sit with your troubles, and then you can start to move through things whilst it's still there. But you can start to move through things. You can start to progress. You can start to grow, and that's where the beauty happens. That's why I meditate so much, and I think that allows me to get to that level. But you can do it in lots of different ways. It doesn't have to be meditation. But for me, that's a really key way to start to engage with those emotions and with that inner feeling, that inner being, as you said, and just sit with those emotions.
Well, and your ability to demonstrate and model that with your team, and in your case, with your communities and your clients, is also just an incredible tool as well, too. So again, Rupert, I want to thank you for stepping into this discussion. I knew that it could go into about 100 different ways, but that's what makes this dialogue so great. And that's what makes people like you so great, is the ability to just step into this discussion, add value where you can, and really share your story. Tell us a little bit about how people can find you and how people can find Growing Happy if they want to learn more.
So they can certainly find Growing Happy across social media on Growing Happy UK, www.growinghappy.co.uk. Visit the website. One thing I do really want to focus on is we're working on a project at the moment which is hopefully going to allow individuals to design a better future across communities, and looking at global issues, be it around the environment, be it around loneliness, be it around mental health, be it around broken communities, and allow them to design their solutions and design their answers. So if you want to follow Growing Happy and keep up to date with this, we're working with a couple of inspirational individuals. There's a book and a film coming. So watch this space. But hopefully, like David Attenborough, we can start to do something really special and something different. So please do follow us.
That's incredible. And good luck with that effort. I think scaling what you do is going to be incredibly beneficial to a lot of people. So I'm excited that you've got to focus on scalability. And I know that there's going to be a lot of folks that are going to be keeping an eye out for all of the great work that you're going to do here in the future, Rupert. So again, thank you so much for stepping into the conversation. I want to share with folks that if you liked today's discussion, we do this every week. We broadcast live every Thursday at 3 o'clock. You can find the schedule, all previous episodes, and you can register for future episodes at www.thoughteum.com/live. We are already lining up our December speakers. I can't believe that we're already in the last month of the year, and we've got some incredible guests coming up, so you can check those out on the website. Most importantly, again, Rupert, thank you so much for your leadership, your perspective, and we're so happy to have you a part of the Thought Team community. A big shout out to Aaron for bringing you to the table, because this one was special. Thank you so much, and you all have a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much.